II. Mr. Hannon, why did you go into the service, and how old were you when you started serving?
All able-bodied men over the age of 18 had to serve in the military, either voluntarily or involuntarily. I elected when I was 17 to enlist in the U.S. Navy. And on my 18th birthday, I began service in the Navy.
Thank you. About when did you come into the war?
On August 24th or 25th, 1944.
Okay. What kind of shift were you on, and what was the name of it?
I was aboard an ammunition ship, a U.S. Navy naval ammunition ship, and the name of the ship was USS Vesuvius.
Okay.
All ammo ships were named after volcanoes
Why were they named after volcanoes?
because they all could erupt. They all had the potential to erupt.
Okay. How did you feel before, during, and after the war?
That's kind of hard to answer. I never gave that much thought. I think I was doing what everyone my age was doing at that time, and I think it was sort of expected of you, and you thought it was a duty that you had to do.
Were you like scared in the war, like during the war or anything? Had anything?
When anybody says they weren't, it's foolish.
I would think so. Describe the landscape of where you were in the war.
We, for the most part, we were in the Pacific, and for the most part, our landscape was ocean and islands, and what they used to call atolls, which were islands developed out of coral reef.
Yeah. And what did you do aboard ship? And did you enjoy it? Whatever you did.
I enjoyed it. I was a signalman. A signalman was one who, you see naval pictures and you see ships with the lights flashing between the different ships. They are signaling to each other. They are sending messages, and that's what I used to do.
Okay. Did you have any friends that were killed in the war?
Not in the Navy. There was some that I knew of that were in the Army, yes. Oh, there is one that he was in the Navy, the U.S. Navy aboard actually he was in a Navy dive bomber, which was lost at sea.
Can you tell me the names?
Well, his name was John Walsh, but that's about all I know.
Oh, thanks.
He and I went to grammar school together.
How long were you on the ship for, and did you ever get seasick?
I was on the ship, maybe, I'm guesstimating now about 16 months, if not a little longer.
Did you ever get seasick?
Fortunately, I got sick, but not sick enough to have to heave overboard. Usually what would get you, if you learn to stay amidships and stay away from food, you could survive it.
Did you miss your family while you were gone?
Oh, you miss home, yes. You don't have the liberty to do things.
Did you disagree with any orders on board the ship? And if so, what were they?
I don't recall outwardly disagreeing with. I was low enough on the echelon that it wouldn't make any difference how I felt about it anyway.
Yeah. Were there any mishaps on board ship? What were they?
There were some. We had a fire in a forward hold, which is actually it used to be where the chain, what they used to call the chain locker, and we had smoke billowing out of that, and we looked at each other and our complexions had changed. But fortunately, they got the fire out, because on an ammo ship you don't want anything like that.
Yeah. What was
And the other one was, I think, was the typhoon, which we were lucky to survive.
Anything special happened during the typhoon?
Yeah, I thought it was a shell, but Colleen read out of the ship's log that it was a bomb that had broke loose. And 1,000 pounds rolling back and forth against the side of the ship could be a disaster. Except 2 men were brave enough to stop it so that it didn't do any more damage.
What was the food like on board ship?
Well, the food, I would not say that it was the Ritz, but it was something that I wouldn't complain about.
What was it like sleeping in such
Oh,
close
I
quarters?
was reminded by prompters that talk about the coffee cups. We used to have coffee on the watches at night, and that would be like 2 and 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, where they would bring the coffee around to the different watch stations aboard the ship, and they were losing cups. So they said that there would be no more cups. So some people with some ingenuity decided to save cans that food came in and use those for the coffee. And that's what we used to get around not having our coffee at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning.
What was it like sleeping in such close quarters?
Sometimes in the South Pacific it was very hot. And we were pretty warm. And it was close quarters.
Was it pretty warm sleeping, like, in the winter too?
No, not in the winter.
No?
We, our bud was so thin that one time we were off the coast of Japan. And I remember it very well. It was, I was like on a 12 to 4 watch. And it got to about 60, 65 degrees, and everybody was freezing. So they had to go and they took the fire axes and broke out the crates for the clothes that we had in the North Atlantic, which were heavy baby jackets, and wore them. And we're thankful that we could get them. Even though they smelled with mildew.
Did much change when you got back? And if so, what?
Yes, I think it did, because there were thousands and thousands of my age that came back, with us having a different outlook on life. I know, I think it'll be a lot different than if I just got out of high school and didn't have that experience.
Did it affect your life in any way?
It did because I got out of the Navy in June 6th of 1994, and by June 12th or 13th, I was back in school. I had left my junior year from high school, and rather than just be satisfied with a diploma, I wanted to be able to go to college. So all that summer I took courses that made me eligible for college.
I was told that you played the bugle.
I used to play. I used to play for colors and taps, and at burials I played taps. At a board ship I would play for colors and at nighttime.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Hannon, for this outlook on what the war was, World War II was.
So
I was going to ask you to ask them what are colors. Do you know what colors are?
No, by the way, what are colors?
colors are in the morning when when you're in a naval ship, when you're in port, you pull up the ensign or the American flag, and at night, you what they call retreat, you would pull it down again. When a ship is at sea, it never takes the flag down. It's always up 24 hours. And sometimes a flag, in a matter of months, would be in shreds and have to be replaced.
Thank you, Mr. Hannon.
You're welcome.
This is an excerpt from the USS Vesuvius ship log that Mr. Hannon had spoke about in regards to the typhoon.
You'll have to...
Convoy, and course was set southeast to avoid the storm area moving northeast. On the 1600 and 2000 watch, it was believed that the storm had passed to the west and had gone on to the north, but that idea was soon dissipated by the barometer. It continued to fall. The wind increased until it was a screaming living thing attempting to tear the ship to pieces. Now there was no doubt about the typhoon. The storm's course had shifted due east right into the path of the convoy. This was it. Course was altered with orders to head into the wind to ride out the typhoon. By midnight, every ship's position was blotted out. Searchlights were ordered on to prevent collisions. Their strong beams were of no help. They could only penetrate a few yards of the thick water. Rain and spray were streaming horizontally against the Vesuvius. A ship was reported in trouble a few yards ahead. The Vesuvius was pitching like a wild elephant on a rampage. The clinometer recorded a roll of 41 degrees, and the pointer jammed at this reading. The maximum roll was estimated at 45 degrees. No cargo ship was ever built to take this much of a roll. The helmsman had only a token of control. Keep her into the wind was the only order he followed. Over the radio came worse news. Men were being washed overboard from the decks of other ships. Some ships had lost steering control. Another was afire. So far the Vesuvius was lucky. Then from the security patrol came the bad news. Some of the cargo was shifting in the holds. A 1,000-pound bomb in number 2 hold was loose. A man lying unconscious topside was in immediate danger of being washed overboard. A line of injured men was forming outside sick bay. Most injuries were minor. 2 men were brought in on stretchers. The man on deck, it turned out, had been fighting his way aft with the wind when a combination of wind and sea threw him violently against a bulkhead and stunned him. Fortunately, he was rescued before the next wave could wash him into the raging sea. Meantime, the combined efforts of the crew secured the shifting cargo in the holds and the 1,000-pound bomb that had been running amok. Another danger was added when it was reported that 100-pound bombs settling in their bins were causing sparks, a very real and distinct danger amongst the ether fumes given off by powder cans. However, nothing was to come of it but uneasiness. A tanker reported passing a man in the water, but it could do nothing to help him. The USS Detroit reported a number of men washed overboard. The USS Anzio had a fire among her aircraft. The USS Lazen, an ammunition ship, reported a fire in her number 4 hold. Both fires were brought under control and extinguished. The USS Anzio had lost steering control and was reported falling off toward the Vesuvius. Searchlights on board could not spot her. She was unable to see anything in the Vesuvius direction. Radar reported the Anzio close, then veering off and finally having passed clear. Radio transmitters aboard were now out of order. Logs, charts, and instruments were all jumbled in a mass of soggy paper in the chart house. Not many men aboard expected to see the light of day. Men prayed and prayed hard. Others did not have time to pray, but battled desperately to master the dangers which threatened. The situation was grim. At 5 o'clock in the morning, the center of the storm was reached. The wind stopped abruptly, but the enormous seas continued. Men who ventured out on deck into the dim light of dawn described the sea as being like mountains of water. The air was calm for 20 minutes, and the barometer dropped to 28.3. Suddenly, the wind, in a 110-mile gust, started in from exactly the opposite quadrant. It was a howling, living thing again. Mines were a constant threat during normal weather, and lookouts night and day helped spot them. But no one gave them a thought during the storm. No one dared. At 0700, visibility was improving, and the wind died down as quickly as it came. A count was taken. The entire Vesuvius crew was answered up and was accounted for. The rest of the day was taken up with the repairing damage of essential equipment and to reorienting convoy formation. On June 6th, the emergency order, the USS Schroeder, was rearmed. The casualties of the typhoon were transferred at sea to the USS Howard F. Clark for hospital ship treatment on this date. On the 8th day, the crew shook off the effects of the storm by resting. The 9th dawned with the USS Villa Woods coming alongside to port, while on the starboard side at the same time the USS Brush was rearmed. The USS Maddox followed the Brush to finish off an easy working day. Quite a bit of damage was done to the entire combat fleet by the typhoon. In fact, active combat operations had ceased. The 10th was another day of rest, while on the 11th, the escorts from the 7th Service Squadron 6 were replenished. That's it.
The typhoon actually, I believe, did more damage to us that day than any of the Japanese could have done. Many of the carriers lost the forward flight deck. They were completely collapsed. Damaged aircraft was thrown over the side to sink. The cruiser Pittsburgh lost its bow completely. But thank God the extent of the loss of life was minimal.
Yep. This is Mr. Hannon in dungarees for casual. And this is Mr. Hannon in his whites for formal.
Tommy Gorman asked me to mention where the ship, a little bit about the history of the ship and where it was. It was commissioned in Brooklyn, New York, and after its commission, they went on what's called a shakedown cruise off the Atlantic. Went to the Naval Ammo Depot in Earl, New Jersey, which is actually Sandy Hook. There's a 2-mile pier down there for handling ammunition. The ship was loaded, left Sandy Hook, New Jersey, to the Panama Canal, through the Panama Canal to the Pacific, specific to the Ulithi Islands, and an island, we were near an island which was called Mogmog, and that was sort of our base. We went off to Okinawa, I believe, twice. Came back from Okinawa and went to the Philippines. From the Philippines, back off the coast of Japan. Came back from the coast of Japan to the Philippines and was rearming for the invasion of Japan when the war was over. We left the Philippines in, I believe it was October of 1945, and ended in Inuiatok atolls, and we're there for about a week or two, and our orders that we were being transferred from the Pacific Fleet to the Atlantic Fleet. Went to Balboa City and took on some more ammunition from a Marine base. Went to the canal, back to Earl, New Jersey, or Sandy Hook, New Jersey. Unloaded our ammo, left Sandy Hook, New Jersey, went down to a place called Orange, Texas, which is right near Beaumont, Texas. It's like a suburb of Beaumont, and it's up a channel called the Sabine Channel, and that's where the ship was put in mothballs. A few years later, when we were living down in Jersey, and they had Armed Forces Day, we went down to the ammo depot, my wife and part of the family that we had then, and I was advised by one of the Navy men that was on the Vesuvius that they had reactivated it and taken it out in mothballs, and it was used in the Korean War, and that it was then back in Puget Sound in mothballs again. And